Hello and welcome to episode 49 of Driver's Seat Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. I will be continuing my wheel review series today, and we will be focusing on the two racing-themed episodes of the long-running show King of the Hill and their two major racing guest stars. But before we get to the episodes, let's talk about the show itself. So King of the Hill was created by Mike Judge, well known as the creators of Office Space and Beavis and Butthead. And by the way, on a personal note, if you have not checked out Season 9 of Beavis and Butthead, which at the time of recording just ended, you were really missing out. Now, the show itself is set in the fictional town of Arlen, Texas. It centers around family man and propane salesman Hank Hill, his wife Peggy Hill, his son Bobby Hill, and his niece Luann. Now, Hank is a caring, hardworking, honest, religious, and somewhat gullible family man who is well known for selling propane and propane accessories. And the show follows Hank, his family, and his friends as they have different adventures. Now, the show in itself had a long lifespan with 253 episodes lasting from 1997 to 2009. In doing research for this episode, I came across just a sheer amount of well-known actors, actresses, singers, and athletes who had played characters or had cameos. And since it would take me far too long to recite them all verbally, here's a list for you. Now, there's a lot of talent on there, but there are two notable names on that list that I didn't include, and we will be discussing them today. Now, as I said, there were two specific episodes centered around racing. The first of the two was Life in the Fast Lane Bobby's Saga, which was the 21st episode of Season 2 and the 33rd episode overall. So the Speedway features Arlen Speedway, a fictional track near Arlen, Texas, where the NASCAR Cup Series, then the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, was racing. To teach his son the value of $1 and what hard work really pays, Hank's son Bobby gets a job at the racetrack at Hank's insistence. Bobby quickly learns that the owner of the track is a mentally handicapped and crazed taskmaster. Side character Boomhauer is eligible to drive the pace car after a series of races. Race day comes. Hank doesn't believe Bobby's boss is really as bad as he is, and when the track owner asks Bobby to cross the active racetrack, Hank sees this in horror. Hank himself then crosses the track and literally kicks the owner's ass. By the way, it was noted that this is the only episode where Hank threatened to kick somebody's ass and then went through with it. There's episodes where he's kicked somebody's ass but never threatened them, and many episodes where he threatened somebody and never went through with it. This is the only episode where it actually happened. Now, it is a pretty decent episode, but the episode is far and away known for a cameo from the late Dale Earnhardt Sr. At one point in the show, Hank and Bobby are at the track looking at the pace car, which is behind a set of velvet ropes. And Bobby talks about how soft the rope is, and Hank's like, "Look at the pace car, Bobby." When Earnhardt made a cameo, he literally repeated what Bobby said. Basically, he said, "Yeah, these ropes are soft. I noticed them around the pace car," and then just walked away while the guys are all frozen in awe at what they were seeing. Now, for being the archetype of the old school NASCAR driver, and how many antagonists in modern racing video games, movies, TV shows, etc., all bear some resemblance to Dale Earnhardt Sr., it's actually kind of amazing how he wasn't used in pop culture more. Now, there is a valid reason for this, because Jeff Gordon, who has done everything from Sesame Street to The Simpsons, but that's because Gordon has a certain charisma to him. He is a natural talker, and we'll cover that we'll cover natural talkers in a little bit. But he can sort of effortlessly put himself in any role he's given, whether it be TV shows, commercials, cartoons, video games, etc. And the thing is, Earnhardt was much more soft-spoken than that, and he wasn't really as on-screen. He didn't really have the on-screen charisma that Gordon did. So Gordon could effortlessly fit in any role he's given, but Dale Sr. at times seemed almost uncomfortable on camera. He was in 3 other cameos aside from this. He really didn't do any acting outside of this, but he was in Arliss, Stroker Ace, and Basketball. I mean, I understand that he's not the most charismatic and not the best on-screen presence, but it's kind of amazing he wasn't really as used as much, because he still was, for most of his career, one of the biggest drivers in NASCAR. Okay, now from one extreme to the other, I will shift focus from Dale Earnhardt Sr. to John Force. I've had the pleasure of meeting John Force multiple times. I've had a few conversations with him. And I think I speak for everyone who's ever had a conversation with him when I say that John Force can have a conversation with anybody. He is one of the best natural talkers I've ever seen in auto racing. And what's even great was when you watch a fired up John Force come across cutting a promo after something, it's entertaining to say the least. With that in mind, you would think that John Force would be tailor-made and perfect for cameos in TVs and movies and everything else. And you would be 100% right, provided he's not reading from a script. Like I said before, John Force is a natural talker. Nobody's going to argue that. But when he has to read scripted material, he seems off. It's not a knock on him, but it's just he's not as good reading scripted stuff as he is when he naturally talks. And this becomes evident in King of the Hill Season 8 episode Dale Be Not Proud, which is the 14th episode of the season and 163rd overall. So, the episode features Hank and his buddies at the drag strip at Arlen Speedway, watching the then NASCAR Powerade drag racing series. They get to meet John Force, he isn't running that race. He isn't running in the race that day, even though in the show he's wearing his 7-layer fire suit. And so, as it turns out, Force ends up in the hospital needing a kidney, and side character Dale Gribble is a matching type. But when it turns out that Force's kidney problems are the result of nothing but a blockage, his kidney gets sent for a young boy who needs one. But being as self-centered and narcissistic as Dale Gribble is, he initially tries to take the kidney back for himself, but eventually changes his mind and lets the young boy have the kidney. That's really all there is to it. Now, I will say that the sound effects in the scene where there's actually on-track nitro-burning funny cars are actually quite good. The episode itself is actually decently well written. And that's also the same thing of the other episode, too. I mean, both episodes have good writing and good production value. But John Force reciting scripted lines is just not good. He is a really, really great natural talker. He was only ever vaccinated with a phonograph needle, but he sounds very artificial in his lines. But I think also where they made a mistake was they spoiled the use of two of the best cameos that they could have ever gotten in terms of racing. And these aren't the kind of cameos that come easily. And I think also, like, I think that from what I've been hearing, recently Mike Judge has started up a new production company, and one of the things on the list of stuff they want to do is a reboot of King of the Hill. I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't think it's a good idea. I really don't. And I say that because it was good for what it was, but I think nowadays it just might not have the same oomph that it once did. And again, I'm a fan of Beavis and Butthead. The new writing, the new series and the new writing is actually very funny, but it just doesn't have the oomph that it once did. Yeah, and that about does it for this week. Next week, an amazing NASCAR movie will be discussed. I'm Dave Farson. Leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you with another episode of Driver's Plug Radio next week.